Okay, so here we are with the kick drum lined up ready to show you. I'm going to take this one drum at a time, I think, otherwise these still could be quite long videos if I try and talk you all the way through the drum processing. As you can see, it's quite considerable. It takes you all the way up to here on drums. This is all just drum tracks. So, excuse me, let's just look at the kick to begin with. Let's listen to, I'll tell you what, let's listen to the drums in isolation first. You can hear the whole thing. I don't think I've played you that so far. So you can hear they're really roomy, really controlled, really punchy, smacky, all those kind of things. Again, trying to take these real drums and give them the kind of control and impact and the continuity, not the continuity, what's the word I'm looking for? The consistency is the word I'm looking for, that electronic drums can deliver. What I didn't want to do was just use samples on this. The individual hits are so important. The minute differences between every single hit are really important to keep the integrity and reality in the drums, even if they are heavily processed. So I've gone so far in processing that it's important to maintain the reality, and I think that's where samples and drum packs fall down, and why I tend not to use samples wherever possible. I don't think I've used the sample in a drum mix for going on a year now, and with the right kind of control applied, you don't need to, and it keeps the reality in the drums. So let's isolate the kick. Let's play a little bit of that. You can hear it's really, really heavily gated. I don't always go in that hard on gating, but in this instance, I felt it absolutely necessary. It was just something that needed to be done because there's quite a lot of cymbal spill. Will the drum is big hitter, as I've mentioned already in the earlier video, and the cymbal spill in these drums was something that needed to be managed. Let me take off the two gates that I've got on here. I've got the first gate is Gatey Weighty by Boz Digital. Crazy gate. It reminds me of the Drama DS201, a real hardware gate. It has this certain sonic characteristic to the attack that it adds, which I really, really like. Sometimes even the gate can add some sonic snap. Let me mute that for the time being, and also the Oxford drum gate, which I'll come back to in a bit because that's quite an impressive plugin. I want to show you that. So let's look at the first mic. I mean, there's 4 channels here down for the kick drum. 2 buses, they're identical really. One has the hardware that I use on my hybrid system printed. I'll play you the differences between those, but this is just the channel without the hardware on it at the moment. I'll take the other plugins off too. What I might do though is leave the saturator on because it sounds pretty awful until then, and I work straight into the saturation. So let's have a quick look at listen to the in mic of, so it's the kick drum in mic. This was a SE Voodoo VR1. It's a ribbon mic. This is a technique I don't do so often anymore, but it's a Steve Albini style approach to recording a kick drum, where you place the ribbon mic, a figure 8 mic, in the center of the kick drum, equidistant between the batter head and the resonant head, in order to try and capture a holistic kick drum sound, both heads in one microphone. It's a real pain to set up. It's one of the reasons I don't do it so much anymore. It does generate this kind of quite beach ball-y sound quite often, because you have to take quite a bit of the padding out. If I take the EQ off of this mic, you can hear that beach ball-y tone. It's got that kind of plastic beach ball-y sort of sound to it. The EQ, as you can see, is quite harsh. I've gone very heavily after the fundamental of the drum here, the tuned kick. There's some mud or wool taken out of it here. This is and then also an active EQ up here, just digging out some of the extended bouncy beach ball-y tone. If you hear this active, So you can hear that that's taken away some of that beach bally element. Okay, the second mic was a Neumann FET U47 FET 47 placed outside on the resonant head. That is a standard procedure. There's a little plugin on here called SK10 by Wave Factory. This emulates the sub-kick mic that you can also build yourself or buy. Yamaha make one, which is a small speaker, sort of 8 inches in diameter really, which is wired up like a microphone and placed in front of the kick. I find those quite cumbersome and awkward, to not necessarily to position, but they get in the way of a lot of other things that I'd like to do in the positioning of my FET microphone. So I've been using this plugin for a while. It's free to download. It's a really good plug. It adds a kind of low frequency bump that this sub kick adds. Let's have a quick listen to it without. There's quite a lot of attack on this. It's quite a loose resonant head, and this adds a little extra bump to it. You can hear the cymbal spill on that microphone outside the kick drum. It's quite considerable. I just was not feeling that it had enough low end in total, this kick, and I couldn't, rather than just adding low frequency information to these two microphones with an EQ, I've used what is it's a trick that I've seen Eric Valentine describe recently on one of his videos in his Making Records with Eric Valentine series. This is a copy of this first Insider microphone with a bunch of heavy processing on it. Let me just delete these, mute these for a second. You can hear there's a copy of that first mic. And this is the EQ being added to that. As you can see, it's a drastic cut of all the top frequencies with that fundamental boost down low again. It's gated to this from this kick feed here. I have to run elaborate independent feeds for my gates because of the hybrid system that I run with hardware inserts on Pro Tools. It's a long story. I don't want to go into it. In order to get this where I wanted this and to kind of control the extension, this is designed to add an extension to the kick. If you hear this, I've had to delay this in order to get it to work. So I'm using this precision timer line that delayed it by 96.79 samples, or 2 feet 3 inches. It just adds a little low frequency extension to the low end of the kick. If I add these two back in, you can hear that. So that's without it. It's just an extended low punch to the kick drum that I feel it required. And this last microphone is an odd one, this is the Vorst mic, the knee mic, placed halfway between the kick drum and the snare, and it's sort of distorted at the recording stage. I've just used this, I've gated this to the kick drum, and I'm adding a little top end on it, and I'm using it to kind of the distortion in it to extend and soften the attack of the kick drum a little bit. It's not so obvious in this state. This is what it sounds like gated and isolated. You can hear it's quite a horrible sound. But I'm trying to add a slightly more natural top end to it, which is far more evident once this saturation plugin and the gate is on. The softening nature of it is much more evident later on. Anyway, this is the whole thing. And this is where this incredible plugin by Sonox comes in. This is an intelligent gate. It does a number of things. It does two very important tricks in this particular mix scenario. It has the ability to recognize the difference between a kick drum's overall type of sound, snare drum and tom, so it's very good at isolating them from and isolating the sound that you want from the spill. You've got some decay controls in here, but it also has a drum leveler as well, and for this I wanted, before the drum hits the outboard compression, I wanted to level them out volume wise. So this doesn't compress, it doesn't limit, it reads ahead and auto levels. This is what it sounds like on. And as you can hear, all but gates out. There's still a little bit seeping through. Let me turn off the saturator here, this Saturn plug by FabFilter. And as you can hear, that is doing an awful lot of the heavy lifting to design the tone on this. This is a fantastic plugin, and it really cleverly emulates tape, but it does a little bit more than that. It's a multi-band saturation plugin, so I'm able to add designed low frequency saturation, low mid saturation, high mid saturation, and high frequency saturation at different levels. I'll come back to how this is set up a little later on once you've seen a few more of these in action. But yeah, you can hear the difference it makes. It's incredible. Okay, so that is my kick drum lined up, ready to be sent to my hardware insert, which is this here. Actually, there's a little EQ, there's another active EQ here, just trimming and cropping a little bit. It's adding a little boost at times to the high sort of mid frequencies to high frequencies of the kick, just the attack, just pushing that into the saturation more. Then it goes to this hardware insert here. Here is a snapshot plugin, which is photographic evidence of the hardware settings that I have. The chain is a 550 A, which is an API EQ. You may be familiar with those from Brighton Electric and other studios. There is then a 565T, which is a vintage Uri filter, which I've got set up to take out some resonant frequencies. Then a DBX 160 XT, Dave Pensado's favourite kick drum compressor. I bought one on his recommendation, not personally obviously, but they're relatively cheap actually as outboard compressors go, certainly ones that are revered anyway. Then it goes to a transient designer, excuse me, where I've just boosted the attack ever so slightly and held back some of the sustain. Here's the difference between the sound of those hardware plugins in and out. That's without the hardware chain, and that's with the hardware chain. It's a little quieter. There's some compression going on, but yeah, there's definitely a low push into the compression, which rounds off the bottom end very nicely. There's also some EQ, additional EQ there, another EQ, just doing what EQs do, and a further gate, the gatey weighty, just adding that snap that I've mentioned before. But yeah, that's what's going on with the kick drum. That's pretty much it for the kick drum. In the next video, we'll look at the snare.